Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm here today in central London and I'm just going into St James's Park. It's very busy out today in Trafalgar Square, and also up ahead you'll see there's a lot of British flags, the Union Jack, because soon the coronation of Charles is going to happen here in London. So I think a lot of people are in London for that, and that's going to be quite an event. So I'm thinking about where I want to paint. Maybe the case that I actually paint here so I can get some of these flags going down towards Buckingham Palace at the end of the road, or maybe I'll go into St James's Park and paint a scene in there. But it's a really nice sunny day today, definitely a good day to paint, and yeah, this should be quite an interesting place to paint. A lot of people, so I imagine maybe we'll get a lot of interest in the painting as it goes. So I'm here on the Mall at the moment. To my right we've got the Mall Galleries, which always does different art exhibitions, open calls to artists. Quite a nice gallery to visit, and I'll show you up ahead how things are looking. So you can see all these Union Jacks down the Mall, and definitely has the atmosphere of a celebration coming up. This will be the first coronation for most people, I guess, unless you're older than 70, I believe. You may have seen Queen Elizabeth II get crowned, but for most people this will be the first time they see a king, a monarch crowned in the UK. So a lot of people are coming to London. So I'm here in St James's Park. I've walked around the whole park and I've decided I'm going to paint this scene behind me. I really like the flowers and all the colours which we're getting in the flowers and the tulips. I do like the scene over there which has a fountain, but I have painted that fountain before, so I decided I'm going to paint this one. I put a very thin layer of tone down on my canvas so that it's not pure white, and that way it'll be slightly easier to paint the composition on top of that. And there is a lot of people around, so people are going to be walking right in front of the scene I'm going to paint, but I'm going to have to put up with that and maybe paint a few people into the scene as well. Remember, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel, and let's start painting. So here I'm using my New Wave art palette. I've got my medium here, which is just distilled turpentine for today. I've got titanium white, cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, raw umber, cadmium red, alizarin crimson, permanent green, manganese blue, and ultramarine blue. I'm going to be using my palette knife to mix the colours and then applying the colours on the painting using my paint brushes.
I've began the painting by toning the canvas, and I've applied the paint very thinly to the surface of my panel just by rubbing it in with tissue. That way this paint dries and it won't interact much with the paint that I put on top. Instead of putting one general colour over the entire panel, I've split it up into two colours, this sort of V shape for the sky, and then the rest of the painting I've toned this warm brown hue, and this is representing the trees and then everything in the foreground. And then on top of this I'm now drawing with raw umber. I divide my panel vertically and horizontally, and then I start to place points of significance into the composition. I'm trying to be a bit more specific with the contours of the trees. And also marking down where the path is going to fit onto the painting. And once I've got things roughly marked down into my composition, I'm going to key the painting. So I'm going to establish the darkest dark, and that is in the shadow of this tree. These trees are subsequently casting a shadow over some of the flower bed and then onto the grass and then onto the path as well. And to paint the darks within the tree, I'm just using raw umber paint and ultramarine blue. And then to paint the dark shadows within the grass, I'm using cadmium yellow, ultramarine blue, and a touch of raw umber paint as well. To paint the grass in the areas in light, I'm using mostly cadmium yellow with yellow ochre and a touch of ultramarine blue as well. And at this stage I'm applying the paint quite thinly, and I'm allowing some of the warmth of the imprimatura to shine through in the light grass, which is warmer in colour temperature than that of the shadows. And one reason why you notice this significant temperature shift between the lights and the shadows in a sunlit landscape is because the sun is a warm light source, and the shadows often receive a lot of reflected light from the sky, which is very blue. So you get this blue cast of the sky getting cast into the shadows, and then this warm light of the sun, which is adding a bit more warmth to the colours of the areas which it's lighting. To paint these trees, as they still haven't got their full foliage yet, and they've got a lot of small fiddly branches, I'm just painting in the main trunks of the trees and then some more branches which are then going off into these smaller branches. And for these really small fiddly branches at the ends of the tree, I'm leaving some of the underlayer, this warm underlayer of the imprimatura, to show through and act as the branches. I'm also painting some of this warm brownish colour softly around the perimeter of the trees, and this gives that visual effect of a mass of small branches which are bathing into the sky. Here I've made a colour mix for the sky, which mostly consists of titanium white, ultramarine blue, and a touch of my cerulean blue. And I'm using a filbert brush to paint in this section of the painting, and I'm also picking out small areas within the trees and around the perimeters of the trees to give the impression of the sky breaking through between the branches. So I'm painting the negative space between the branches with the blue of the sky, and by painting the sky around the trees rather than the trees around the sky, it allows me to keep some of the warm brown for the imprimatura to act as the branches of the trees. And as I'm painting out a prima, so wet paint onto wet paint, by painting the sky after I've painted the trees, it means that I've been able to paint some really nice crisp dark lines as I'm painting these lines onto a dry canvas, whereas if I try and paint crisp dark lines on top of this light blue of the sky, the paint is going to mix, and those dark lines, which will start off as a dark line, the further I drag the paintbrush into the sky, the lighter and greyer and murkier the line's going to become. So this is why when painting out a prima, I don't like to paint dark paint on top of light paint, as due to the colours mixing, it's going to take away a lot of the impact and the darkness of the dark paint. Also, there's something quite nice about dragging a paintbrush across a dry panel, the dark colour mix mixed in with a bit of my painting medium, and with a round pointed brush, these really fine lines almost like a calligrapher, and these work really nicely as the branches of the trees. Whereas again, if I was going to try and paint these fine lines on top of wet light paint, the brush would start to splay out a bit and I wouldn't get the same effect. Here I'm painting in the path, and I'm painting this bluish purple shadow which is getting cast by the trees. And I've also painted in some of the railings using a fine pointed round brush. And now I'm starting to paint in a few figures. As it is the weekend of the coronation of the king, so many people are in London, and St James's Park is always busy on the weekend, but it is particularly busy right now, so I feel like it wouldn't look like St James's Park without the hustle and bustle of the people. I'm painting a few figures on the path, and here I'm painting in a lady in the foreground, and she's walking towards the flower bed. And I generally like to place people, if they're on the right hand side of the painting, I like to place them looking or moving towards the left hand side of the painting, or if they're on the left hand side of the painting, I generally like to paint them looking towards the right hand side of the painting. And the reason for this is you want the composition to be captivating, and you want people to look at the painting and not have a reason to exit the painting. And we do always look at where people are looking, and this is a sort of way of creating a loop to keep people engaged with the painting and for them to look around and discover new things within the painting. And here I'm painting in a lady who is looking at the flower bed and her back is turned to us. And one thing I like about this person in the scene is her dress has a similar tone to that of the flowers, so she kind of merges into the flower bed, and that way she's not too distracting, but she will be one of those points of secondary interest within the painting, as when you observe the painting a bit closer, you'll see her looking into these beautiful coloured flowers.
I hope you enjoyed that video of me painting here in St James's Park. It's been really busy and it's been nice with the sun out. The sun is setting now as it's quite late in the evening. If you did enjoy that, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video.
If you enjoyed this video, then you might enjoy my next video of me painting a plein air landscape in Regent's Park in North London.